few weeks later, after doing a bunch of due diligence, he finally makes his request. He's like, I need someone to unalive Mr. and Mrs. Cordero and make it look like a burglary gone wrong if you could. And then he gives them their address and he attaches their photos and a $16,000 Bitcoin payment, and he hits submit. But then he's like, holy shit, and he immediately panics and cancels it. The next day, I guess he changes his mind yet again and he resubmits his order. Also, apparently, he has the audacity to ask the Hitman website if he can get a discount on these murders, since both the victims live in the same house. Bro is really trying to get a buy one murder, get one free. But anyway, after submitting, Pence waits. And he waits. And he waits. But yet, nothing happens. Why does nothing happen? Well, that's probably because this Hitman website isn't being run by hitmen at all. It's actually a scam website being run by some guys in Romania. And so these scam artists just take the $16,000 in Bitcoin Pence paid them, and they bounce. And they're never heard from again. Bro got scammed. Oh, but it gets much worse for Pence, because all the way over in the UK, there's a British hacker who's secretly been hacking this Hitman website, and he's feeding the hacked information to a bunch of TV producers who are making some kind of murder-for-hire TV show. And all that information is also being forwarded to the FBI. And so the FBI looks into this, and now they know that this guy Pence tried to put a hit out on these other guys, Mr. and Mrs. Cordero. And so, bam, they arrest him. Here's his mugshot. And so Pence ends up taking a plea deal, and he gets sentenced to 7 years in prison. Meanwhile, his wife, Michelle, is left to take care of their 16 kids all alone. And she apparently has to rely on charity to survive. Yikes. So this guy, his name is Diddy. And Diddy is in a lot of trouble. See, do you remember that time Eminem got beat up and then sued for $1 million? Well, it all starts with this kid, Marshall. And Marshall's 9 years old, living in Michigan, and bro has a problem. The poor kid gets bullied a lot in school. I mean, he's only in the 4th grade, but he's getting kicked around like every day. Specifically, there's one kid who messes with him a lot. This kid, D'Angelo. And D'Angelo's a little older, he's 11, he's in the 6th grade, but he is much bigger than Marshall. And Marshall, admittedly, has a big mouth. So D'Angelo and his boys, they whoop up on him all the time. And this goes on for months. But one day, in 1982, they give it to him real bad. Because it's winter, and it's snowy out, and they're all outside. And the bullies, they see Marshall across the yard. And D'Angelo, I guess he puts like a rock or something hard into a snowball, and he aims it at Marshall, and he throws it as hard as he can. And pow, it hits him, and it knocks him to the ground. Then the bullies all jump him, and they beat him over and over and over again. And eventually, Marshall stops moving. He's blacked out. And D'Angelo and his boys, they're like, oh shit! And they don't want to get in trouble, so they all run away. Later, Marshall gets sent home because, he's hurt. And there, he isn't feeling so well. He's losing his vision in one eye, and his ear starts bleeding. So his mom, or someone, takes him to the hospital. And at the hospital, they determine that he has a cerebral concussion, and for the next 5 days, he apparently goes in and out of consciousness. Well, lucky for Marshall, he eventually recovers, but he's never the same. According to his mom, as a result of all this bullying, not only was he physically injured, but he started exhibiting antisocial behavior and acting out. In fact, she's so upset by the damage this has done to him, she goes and files a lawsuit against the school district, claiming that they neglected to protect her son from harm while he was in their care. But unfortunately for her, the lawsuit is eventually thrown out on the grounds that the school district has like government immunity or something, and they can't be sued in this case. But whatever, they all eventually move on. So fast forward many years, and it's now the late 80s, and Marshall's a teenager, and he gets really into hip-hop and rapping, and he decides, I want to be a rapper, and over the next decade, he starts freestyling and writing songs and competing in rap battles, and he does this for years. He even puts out an album. And then, one night in 1997, his whole life changes because he's 25 years old now, and he competes in a rap battle competition called the Rap Olympics.
I'm moving in for the kill, and I got the trap set. I can tell you whack and I ain't even heard you rap yet.
And he actually does really well. In fact, he does so well, he gets second place. Here's the thing though, in the audience that night is an intern for Interscope Records, and this intern really likes what he hears. So after the show, he goes up to Marshall and he's like, "Hey, you're great. Do you have like a demo or something you can give me?" And Marshall, he's still all salty because he came in second place and not first. And he's like, "Yeah, sure, here, whatever." And he gives him an EP, a literal cassette tape of some of his songs called the Slim Shady EP. Not the Slim Shady LP, the Slim Shady EP. It only has a few songs on it. And that intern eventually passes that tape on to his boss at Interscope. The boss at Interscope loves it, and he passes it on to famous rapper-producer Dr. Dre. And this leads to Marshall getting signed to Interscope Records as Eminem. Then, about a year after that, in 1999, his next album, the Slim Shady LP, drops, and it immediately blows the f*** up. And so does he. And very quickly, he becomes one of the biggest, if not the biggest, rapper in the world. Now, one of his songs on the Slim Shady LP is called Brain Damage, and that song is about the times when he was 9 years old and he would get jumped by D'Angelo and his boys. And in the lyrics, he describes some of it, and he specifically calls out D'Angelo by name. Now, I can't play it for you because of copyright, but I could rap it for you.
Way before my baby daughter Haley, I was harassed daily by this fat kid named D'Angelo Bailey. He banged my head against the urinal till he broke my nose, soaked my clothes in blood, and he grabbed me and choked my throat. Made it home later that same day, started reading a comic, and everything became gray. I couldn't even see what I was trying to read. I went deaf and my left ear started to bleed.
Anyway, that's not all of it, but that's some of it. Here's the thing though, Marshall is so popular now that he's doing all kinds of press and interviews, and he ends up doing an interview with Rolling Stone. And they ask him about his song Brain Damage and if it's true. And he says, of course, yeah, most of it is. Then the Rolling Stone also finds D'Angelo and they reach out to him to get his side of the story. And so D'Angelo, now he's older. He's married with kids, he's working as like a janitor, and he apparently also wants to start a rap career. And so Rolling Stone asks him about the song Brain Damage, and he admits that, yeah, it's true.
"Yeah, we flipped him right on his head at recess. We didn't see him moving. We took off running. We lied and said he slipped on the ice. Hey, do you have his phone number?"
Those are his exact words. Anyways, 2 years later, it's now 2001. And for some reason, I guess D'Angelo sees all the success Marshall's been having, and he starts getting dollar signs in his eyes. He wants some of that Eminem money. And so he goes and he gets a lawyer and he files a lawsuit and he sues him over the song Brain Damage. He accuses Marshall of slander and invasion of privacy for calling him out by name in the song, and in the complaint he specifically cites the song lyrics. And so he claims that the song is not only hurting his reputation, but it's preventing him from starting his own rap career. And because of this, he's suing for $1 million. Here's the thing though, not only are the song lyrics protected by free speech, D'Angelo had already confirmed that what happened in the song was true 2 years before when he did the Rolling Stone interview. So of course, the judge, and she ain't buying it. She knows this case is bullshit, so she rules on it. And she literally writes her opinion into the form of a rap. And I'm not making this up. In her order, this is what she wrote. Mr. Bailey complains that his rep is trash, so he's seeking compensation in the form of cash. Bailey thinks he's entitled to some monetary gain because Eminem used his name in vain. The lyrics are stories no one would take as fact. They're an exaggeration of a childish act. It is therefore this court's ultimate position that Eminem is entitled to summary disposition. But that's not even the whole thing, that's just some of it. The whole order is actually pretty long, so I'm not gonna do the whole thing. However, I think it's pretty safe to say, Judge got bars. So anyway, the judge dismisses the case, partly on the grounds that D'Angelo admitted in the Rolling Stone interview that he used to bully Marshall, and partly because the case is just fucking stupid. And so Marshall won that battle, and as you already know, he ultimately goes on to have an incredibly successful rap career. And thank you to Leonardo.ai for sponsoring this video. If you want to make badass... So why does the internet hate Chris Brown? What's he done that's so bad? Well, let's talk about it. So you all know this guy, his name's Chris, and this story starts when he's 19, and he's already a famous singer at this point, and he's legitimately a very talented guy. And during this period, he just so happens to be dating another famous singer, this woman, Rihanna. So one night in 2009, Chris and Rihanna are driving around town. When Rihanna, I guess she's looking at his phone and she sees something suspicious. A text from a girl that he used to smash with. And this pisses her off, and she accuses him of cheating, and she's screaming, "You're such a liar! I hate you!" And she tries to kick him as he's driving. And of course, this pisses Chris off. And so then, boom, he starts punching her in the face with his right hand while he drives with his left. And bam, she spits on him because she's got blood in her mouth. And he's like, "Oh, I'm gonna beat the shit out of you when we get home." And so Rihanna gets scared, and she tries to call her assistant. But her assistant doesn't answer. And so Rihanna fakes a conversation and is like, "Make sure the cops are there when I get home." I guess she's trying to scare Chris. But Chris doesn't get scared. In fact, he threatens to unalive her. And so he pulls the car over and he starts choking her. And she immediately screams out the window, "Help! He's trying to unalive me!" And the neighbors hear and they call police. A few hours later, bam, Chris is arrested.
Brown was arrested February 8th, just hours after he was accused of beating Rihanna.
Now, of course, this news blows up because they're both so famous. In fact, it's one of the biggest news stories of that year. And photos of her face all beat up, they leak, and they're brutal. And the platforms, they don't allow me to show pictures of domestic abuse, but I mean, you can Google it, it's really bad. And so anyway, Chris ends up going to court and he takes a plea deal and he gets 5 years probation. And to try and rehabilitate his reputation, Chris releases a public apology.
I am very sad and very ashamed of what I've done. I have told Rihanna countless times, and I'm telling you today that I'm truly, truly sorry and that I wasn't able to handle the situation both differently and better.
And so yeah, it seems like he learned his lesson and that he'll never do anything like this ever again. Until... oh no, it turns out old Chris has quite the anger problem. Because 4 years later, it's 2013. He's now around 24 years old, and he's still on probation for beating up Rihanna. And one night, he's in a parking lot, and I guess singer Frank Ocean is there? And Frank and Chris, they get into some kind of argument over a parking space. And this argument gets heated. And it gets so heated that, pow, Chris allegedly punches Frank in the face. And then it kind of turns into a big group brawl. And apparently Sean Kingston is there watching it all. So, you know, shout out to Sean Kingston. Beautiful girls. Watching it all. So, you know, shout out to Sean Kingston. And apparently Sean Kingston is there watching it all. So, you know, shout out to Sean Kingston. Beautiful girls. Now, lucky for Chris, Frank Ocean decides not to press charges. But then one night it happens again. Chris is in Washington, D.C., leaving a hotel when two girls see him and they ask him for a picture. And so Chris stops to take a picture, and I guess there's some random guy there who thinks it would be funny to photobomb them. So he jumps in their picture and he's like, "Ah, hey." And Chris gets super pissed off and says, "I'm not down with that gay shit." And pow, he punches him in the face and it breaks his nose. And so then, bam, Chris is arrested again. Here's his mugshot, and here he is in court. Then, while he's waiting to be officially sentenced, he's out on bail, and he goes to an anger management rehab facility to work on some of his issues. And one day, he's there in a family session with his mom. And Chris, you know, he just doesn't want to be there. He wants to leave. But his mom tells him that she wants him to stay, that it'll be good for him. And for whatever reason, this pisses Chris off. And he apparently flips out and he leaves the facility and he walks outside, picks up a huge rock, and kaboom, he smashes it through her car window. He did that to his own mom. And of course, he gets kicked out of rehab because, you can't be violent in rehab. And so he goes back before the judge, and the judge orders him to attend another rehab facility, making it clear if you leave this rehab facility, you're definitely going to jail. So in 2014, Chris is at a new anger management rehab facility, and one day they're all doing a group therapy session, and the facilitator starts this exercise with the group. He's like, let's go around the room and everyone say something that you're good at doing. Chris, what are you good at doing? And I guess Chris is grumpy that day or something, and he's like, I'm good at using guns and knives, which is not the best thing to say when you're in anger management. And of course everyone's like, what the fuck? And so anyway, boom, Chris gets kicked out of rehab again. And because of that, he has to spend 108 days in jail. Oh, but it keeps going. 2 years later, New Year's Day, Chris has a little party in his Las Vegas hotel room, and a woman there ends up taking a picture of him without his consent. And Chris, he gets real pissed off again, and he's like, pow! He allegedly punches her right in the face. And of course, she ends up filing a lawsuit against him, and Chris gets mad that she did this, and he posts about it on his social media.
Obviously, somebody's looking to get a check or start some shit. I don't know this old looking bitch. This bitch old, like dusty. She came to Vegas, she probably came to my room, it was too ugly to get in.
Anyways, this drama ends when Chris ends up settling with this woman out of court. That same year, in 2016, Chris gets in trouble again because he had hired some kind of manager to help him rehabilitate his bad image. But one day, he allegedly gets mad at that guy and he flips out and he starts punching his own manager. And the manager ends up suing him, and once again, they settle out of court. And so bro just keeps going. Like, you can see a pattern here. Over the years, he's accused again and again and again of assaulting people and essaying many different women, including one time in 2020 on Diddy's yacht, where he allegedly essayed a dancer he met there. Because, Chris and Diddy were apparently friends. In fact, since that first incident with Rihanna back in 2009, there has never been a time period where he wasn't dealing with some sort of serious accusation or assault charge. But then we get to what's going on with him recently. So it's 2023, and Chris is around 34 years old now, and he's on tour in the UK, when one night he goes out to a nightclub in London. And there, Chris gets pissed off for some reason, probably over some dumb shit, and he allegedly picks up a bottle of tequila, and boom, he smashes it over this music producer's head. And the music producer falls to the ground, laying there unconscious as Chris punches and kicks him. Allegedly. And so, of course, local police put out a warrant for Chris's arrest, but by this time, he's already left the country. And 2 years go by, and now it's 2025, and Chris goes on tour again. And for the first time in 2 years, he comes back to England. Once he's there, in his hotel, boom, police arrest him. And I don't have a mugshot for this, but I do have this mugshot from 2018, where he got arrested for apparently assaulting a photographer that I didn't even have time to get into that story. Anyways, as of right now, he's out on bail and free to go on his tour. However, if he is found guilty of this 2023 assault, he's facing up to 16 years in prison. Hey, just reminding you that my entire catalog of true crime videos is now on Spotify. So if you want to listen to me over there, it's called the Ray William Johnson True Story Podcast. So the lead singer of this Christian band tried to unalive his own wife. So the singer's name is Tim, and Tim is 32 during this time, living in California, and the dude is super religious. In fact, he's so religious that he's the lead singer of this popular Christian metal band called As I Lay Dying. But one day, around 2010, his life starts to change. Because Tim, who has always been fairly thin, decides he wants to get fit. And so he starts working out and lifting a ton and trying to get as swole as possible. But I guess working out isn't quite enough because he starts taking a bunch of roids. And it works, of course it does. It definitely helps him get bigger. And pretty quickly he goes from this to this. And he gains about 50 pounds of muscle. And so the steroids are obviously working and doing exactly what he wants them to do. However, they're also starting to change his personality and his behavior, as such things are known to cause irritability and aggression, aka roid rage. And so Tim is getting a bit of roid rage, and apparently his wife, this woman, Megan with two G's, starts to notice these changes in him. I mean, sure, he's buff now, but he's acting like a different person, like he's super angry all the time. Not only that, but he also spends a lot of time at the gym now, like an unhealthy amount of time at the gym. Like he's obsessed with it. Plus, he's spending like thousands of dollars on getting new tattoos and getting new cars, and he's not really keeping his focus where she feels like it needs to be, on their 3 kids that they have. And in addition to the steroids, Tim apparently starts to dabble in other vices associated with rock stardom. Like he's doing much harder drugs like heroin and cocaine. He also is hanging out with a bunch of strippers and smashing with women who are not his wife. So bro is changing a lot. And while Megan is worried about him, I guess he loves his new life. And the only real problem he has is his wife, Megan, with 2 G's. He's just not really feeling her anymore. So one day, while Tim is on tour with his band, he decides to send Megan an email telling her that he doesn't love her anymore and that he wants to end the relationship. And also, he says that he's no longer a Christian. And Megan is shocked. Like, what? Her husband suddenly doesn't love her anymore? Plus, he's no longer a Christian? He's the lead singer of a Christian metal band. How is that gonna work? And this change in particular is huge because Tim has always been extremely religious. Like he was literally voted most like Jesus by his classmates back in high school. The dude was like the Ned Flanders of his school, and now he's suddenly not? Oh yeah, and just a quick side note, it's not just Tim who's no longer religious. The whole band, As I Lay Dying, stopped believing in any gods. But despite that, for years after this, the band continues to market themselves as a Christian band. Because, you know, it's working, it's selling records, and, you know, you got bills to pay, you gotta make that money. Anyway, his relationship with Megan. Soon after she gets that email from Tim, Megan learns that he's been having a bunch of affairs with multiple women and that he also has a secret girlfriend in Florida. And that is just too much for her. She decides she's done with his bullshit. And in 2012, she goes and she files for divorce. But see, Tim is still just like angry all the time about everything. And just roid rage. And as the divorce progresses, he starts getting pissed off about how long this whole process is taking because, you know, divorces take a while. And he starts to blame Megan for it. Like she's the one being difficult and making it impossible to finalize the divorce. He also blames her for spending all this money on divorce attorneys, and he accuses her of being controlling when it comes to his visitation rights with the kids. So he starts to ask himself, is Megan deliberately making it hard for me to see my own children? And he becomes convinced that she's trying to keep them from him. And he doesn't want to lose his kids in all this. He'll do anything to protect his relationship with them. And that is when he comes up with an insane plan. He decides to hire a hitman to get rid of Megan, as so many people do in my videos. The problem is, Tim doesn't know any hitmen, as most people don't. Like, where the hell do you even find a hitman? So he goes to one of his gym buddies and he asks him, hey, do you know of anyone who would be willing to unalive my wife for money? And I guess that friend is like, nah, bro. But word gets around, and eventually this news gets back to one of the personal trainers at the gym. This guy, who we'll just call Trainer. And the next time Trainer sees Tim, he's like, don't ask me to kill your wife, please. So of course, Tim is like, oh yeah, for sure. But do you know anyone who would be down to assassinate my wife? Now, Trainer is obviously freaked out by all this. I mean, he's not trying to assassinate anyone's wife, nor does he know any wife killers. In fact, he doesn't want to see anyone get murdered. And so he decides to set up a little trap to catch Tim. And the next time Trainer meets with him, he tells him that he actually does know a guy who might be willing to unalive his wife. A hitman named Red. Here's the dildo. Trainer doesn't actually know a hitman named Red because there is no hitman named Red. He just made all that up. And so after talking to Tim, he goes to the county sheriff and he tells them about Tim's assassination plan for Megan and about how he told him he knows a hitman named Red who might be willing to do it. And immediately, the sheriff's department gets to work. They put together like a little sting operation where one of their detectives is gonna go undercover and pretend to be Red the Hitman. So then Tim goes to meet this fake hitman Red, aka undercover detective, and they meet up at this bookstore. And Tim and Red discuss the hit, and they go over the plans, and of course, fake hitman is wearing a wire. And Tim gives him an envelope, and inside this envelope is $1,000